Welcome to the Tactics Meeting, Episode 5, Western Canada Marine Response Corporation, for Monday, February 8th, 2021. I'm Dan Smiley, and I'll be your host as we talk to subject matter experts about response tactics and technology. Today's Tactics Meeting safety message is for confined spaces. Deaths in confined spaces are all too common. Workers must be able to recognize confined spaces and understand their hazards. A confined space is one that is large enough to enter, has limited means of entry and exit, and is not intended for continuous human occupancy. 78% of all deaths in confined spaces are caused by lack of oxygen. Never enter a confined space where air monitoring for oxygen concentrations has not been done and where forced air ventilation is not taking place. Now let's get to this amazing episode. I'm here with Michael Lowry from WCMRC. Michael, you did a really amazing presentation for the Washington State Maritime Cooperative seminar in October, and I thought it would be great to get you on the program and talk about the work that WCMRC is doing in British Columbia, the kind of expansion that you're doing with oil spill response equipment. It's really quite amazing. Some of the ship drawings that you showed me make me want to dust my license off and go back to sea. So Michael Lowry, welcome to the program.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on today, Dan. And congratulations on this new endeavor. It's great to have a response specific podcast. We were mentioning just before we get on here that I'm a big podcast junkie, so it's great to be able to be on a podcast. So congratulations on this endeavor, and hopefully people enjoy what they're going to hear today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a podcast junkie myself. I've listened to podcasts like MacBreak Weekly forever, and just have a whole stable of podcasts that vie for my attention. And we've been meaning to do this broadcast for a long time. And since we can't get together for Clean Pacific or for IOSC in person, I don't get to go out and meet with people. I thought now's the time. This is the perfect opportunity to finally start the podcast and talk about some of these things. So thanks you for coming on the program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, one of the things that, we're hoping to talk about today is spill response in Canada, specifically some of the exciting things that are happening with our organization, now and into over the next couple of years. But, I wondered if it might be just beneficial for folks who may not be familiar with this industry, either on the American or the Canadian side, just to kind of give a bit of an overview of where we come and where the industry comes out of in terms of the things we have in place today, and it provides a bit of context in terms of where we're going and where we want to move to in the next couple of years. And I was thinking of going all the way back to the Exxon Valdez. WCMRC has a history in Canada on the West Coast, going back to the mid 70s, but we were really, at that time, we were sort of localized in Vancouver Harbor, which is the biggest port by far in Canada. So we were really looking after, we're a small spill response co-op looking after spills from some of the oil handling facilities in Vancouver Harbor. But that was really the extent of our operation, and it was the Exxon Valdez that really triggered the Canadian government, and obviously as well as the American government, to take a look at what was in place for ship safety, vessel safety, and spill response should something go wrong. And even though that particular spill didn't happen in Canadian waters, it certainly had an impact on Canadian regulations today. And when you look at that spill, what the Canadian government took away, and similar lessons as the American government, is that there needs to be robust spill response in place. And the Canadian government decided that spill response, not only the actual response itself, but the planning, the steady state, the preparedness, that needs to be funded by industry. So in Canada, the shipping and the oil industry provide our funds for that steady state, and then if there's a spill, it's that particular polluter. But even though we're industry funded, we are regulated by Transport Canada. So that's the entity that sets planning standards. How fast we have to respond in certain areas of the coast, how much we have to be able to clean up. And so really we're beholden to those planning standards, and we demonstrate to them through exercises and response plans that we're able to meet that. But when we looked at that, the regulations that are in place, they really, they date back to the mid-90s, and they hadn't changed much. So we were approached by Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is the line that brings oil from northern Alberta down to the west coast for export, and they were hoping to twin their pipeline, and part of that obviously meant that there was going to be an increase in tanker traffic in the Juan de Fuca Strait and in those southern shipping lanes. So they approached us and asked us, what could be done to enhance the spill response that's in place, on the west coast here in the southern portion of the west coast. And so we worked with them. They'd had some risk assessments done through DNV and identified certain areas along the shipping lanes that were at higher risk. And when we kind of came back and said, look, there's so much that is outside of a spill responder's control, similar to a firefighter, for example. You can't control the weather, the winds, the tides, the size of the spill, but you certainly can control how fast you get to the scene of an incident. And we proposed really reducing the response times that exist in Canada in those shipping lanes. So by way of example, and I don't need to get into all the details there, but by way of example, in the Juan de Fuca Strait, currently for a large size spill, like a 10,000 ton spill, we're looking at during current regulations sort of a maximum 72-hour response time, and that communities, that's not good enough for them. And we've our proposal here, the enhancements we're putting in place are actually based now on a maximum 6-hour response time in the Juan de Fuca Strait, the Georgia Strait, and those shipping lanes. And then even shorter response times in Vancouver Harbor, we're looking at a maximum 2 hours. So when we came to that conclusion, committing to those new response times meant a significant enhancement in terms of where we have bases, vessels, people, equipment. So we've had to build out a program where we are adding a number of new bases along the shipping lane. So, previously we had a main base in Vancouver Harbor, and then we had a smaller base on Vancouver Island at Duncan. But what we're doing now is we're adding bases in Nanaimo, in Port Alberni and Ucluelet on the west side of Vancouver Island, down near Victoria at a place called Beecher Bay. And then up near the Gulf Islands, Sydney is another base, and then back on the lower mainland at Fraser River. So those are the places we're adding new bases, and some of those bases will be actually staffed 24/7. So currently our crews are on call 24/7, but they might be responding from their house. So the Sydney base and the Vancouver base will be staffed now 24/7, just like a fire hall. And so those bases will require vessels. So we're essentially doubling the size of our fleet from 44 vessels, adding another 44 vessels. So we'll be close to 90 vessels all told on the coast when we're done here. And then to man those vessels, we needed new people too. So we're adding about 135, 125 new personnel as well. So we'll be looking at 225 full-time staff when all this is said and done. So pretty significant enhancements over the next couple of years here.
Well, you were talking about the skimming vessels that you're having built. Some of these are pretty stout vessels. Can you talk about the size and the capabilities of these new skimming vessels?
Yeah, no, certainly. When in spill response, there's different types of vessels for different purposes. You have your basic work boats to pull boom, move people around. You have your landing craft. When you're responding, remote locations, you need to do beach response, clean up, and that piece. And then there's the barges. So we have small mini barges. We have large response barges to hold the oil. But the workhorses are the skimming vessels. And these vessels, for those folks that aren't familiar, they're purpose built for oil spill cleanup. And they really have two modes, if you will. They're sort of like a transformer type vessel. So in their regular mode, they're very fast boats. Ours go around 30 knots or so. And when they get to the spill site, they're designed so that these spill boom arms will come out over the side and form kind of a V sweep, if you will. And these trapdoors open on the sides of the hull, and the oil is sort of funneled into these trapdoors, and there's these brush skimmers then that rotate through it. So you have a V shape from above, and then the vessel itself is driving into the oil, and then these skimmers will clean it up. And so these vessels, our larger ones, can clean up about 30 tons roughly an hour if they're in heavy oil, and then they hold about that same amount as well. So if they're going full on in heavy oil, they'll clean up about 30 tons, and then that needs to be offloaded, roughly once an hour. And you don't really want that vessel to stop. So the system is designed so that you bring along a mini barge. That oil is pumped out into that mini barge, which is either taken to shore or to a larger storage barge that might be nearby, so that vessel can continue to operate. And they are staffed and crewed and outfitted so that they could operate 24/7 if required. So they've also got infrared cameras on them at the top, so that they can detect that heat signature of the oil, so they can operate at nighttime. And we have different types of skimming vessels, or different sizes of skimming vessels. We have the sort of sheltered ones, and then we have the ones that are more suitable for the open ocean. So it's going to depend on the type of spill, the location, the conditions on which boats or which tools you're going to use for that particular spill. And then the other thing we looked at on the vessel side is we looked at vessels that could really handle the heavier weather you see on the west coast of Vancouver Island and other areas on the coast. And it was a bit of a gap for us. So we went out to a naval architect in Vancouver and asked them to come up with a vessel that could handle the west coast. So this is a brand new type of vessel. We're calling it a coastal response vessel, and it's not designed to skim oil or clean up oil. It's not designed to go fast, but it is designed to get there in any kind of weather condition. So it's a wider vessel. You're not looking at high speed. It's about roughly 10 knots, but it's kind of slow and steady, and it's going to get you to that spill site where other vessels may not be able to handle that. And then it's also designed to be sort of a bit of an operating platform as well. So if you're offshore, you've got a full galley, a full accommodation. So some of the smaller vessels could be wrapped up, and this could be used as sort of a forward operating base during the spill.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the MSRC big blue boats, the Park Responder, Oregon Responder, Hawaii Responder, in their speed and their ability to provide some forward command post operation.
Yeah, these would be slightly smaller than that. The Park Responder vessel that MSRC has, and the other class, the Responder class there, we are getting an offshore supply vessel, which would be similar to the Park Responder. So that vessel is not won't be a new build. We'll be contracting that out, and then our staff, our response staff, will be working on that. So that would be that would be certainly the biggest vessel in our fleet when it comes on, and it would operate very similar to the Park Responder in that it can take equipment out. It can be another forward operating platform, but also it can hold oil as well. So it'll be that multi-purpose vessel, and we'll have one of those stationed in the Victoria region. Probably coming online in 2022.
Okay. Yeah, you need those open water vessels. That water off the coast of Vancouver Island can be some of the roughest in the country. I think it actually holds the record for highest recorded wave at 110 feet off the coast of Vancouver Island some years ago.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't be out doing skimming in those conditions. That's for sure.
No, but people talk about how rough the North Atlantic is. Those people haven't crossed the Gulf of Alaska very recently. When you talk
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
infrared, I mean, when we during Deepwater Horizon, I helped put a bunch of infrared cameras on the skimming fleet that was out there, along with infrared cameras on the majority of MSRC's fleet in the Pacific Northwest. But recently, we've seen those infrared cameras move to drones, and that has really been quite an improvement. FLIR partnered with DJI, and you can now buy, I think it's the Maverick drone with a FLIR infrared camera built into it. So what a great way to try to keep a skimming vessel right in the thickest of the oil. And guys have some recent experience using drones for that purpose, do you not?
Yeah, we've obviously we've been looking at surveillance technologies and how they can help us with response for the last number of years. We've looked at and we have a number of aerostat balloons with the FLIR cameras on them in the fleet. And for those that aren't aware, that's essentially a blimp type structure that's launched from the vessel, and it's tethered to the vessel and it has FLIR cameras on it. But if you get a little bit of wind, and those can be challenged. And we've been using drones for a while to do shoreline work, shoreline assessment. But it wasn't really until this most recent spill, or rather, it's actually a shipwreck. So it's a ship that's leaking oil up in Nuka Sound on the west side of Vancouver Island. And it's really the first time that we brought the drone operator and the drone right onto the skimming vessels and the work boats that are doing the U sweeps. And the captain can look right at the drone feed as they're piloting the vessel. And particularly in this response where you have oil welling up, at different locations, we're able to target that upwelling right away with the drone and zero in on those on those upwellings, on those slicks. And it's been extremely effective for us in terms of our boom sweep operations. And it's certainly something that we're going to look at going forward, and maybe even bringing that capacity in-house, because it's really changed the game for us, having that situational awareness right in the wheelhouse of our vessels.
So you think about bringing it in-house. So the drones you're using now, you've hired an operator to bring
Yeah.
their equipment in?
Yeah, we've got a contract relationship with some different firms that are on call for us, that are available, and that's been great as well. But potentially maybe there's some in-house capacity. So these technologies are changing all the time, and people are finding new benefits and new uses for them all the time. But certainly, we found a huge advantage in having that drone capacity, like I say, right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, in my workday capacity as response manager for the Washington State Maritime Cooperative, I have a drone operator uh, right there on speed dial. And that first assessment, being able to fly a drone off the dock and see how much sheen or oil is really in the water, how far has it really gone, especially at night when operators that are standing on the deck of the boat, really, even with lights on, really can't see the oil. It just reflects off. It's just blackness, right? So they can smell it and they can get some idea, but they can't really see it. And the drone really changes the game, and it can be on scene so quickly. It's so much less expensive than flying a helicopter. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that we faced that exact challenge a number of years ago. There was a spill in Vancouver Harbor, and we in the business we call it a mystery spill. You don't know where the source is. You don't know. No one's taking responsibility for it. You just know that there's reports of oil out there. And so there's a number of anchorages in Vancouver Harbor, and none of the vessels claimed responsibility. We just knew that there was reports of oil, and when we were activated, it was dark, and our folks kind of fumbled around trying to find the source of this spill. So to have had a drone with FLIR capability in that situation would have been a huge game changer.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that technology. I'm happy to be able to utilize it that way. And our first episode for this podcast, actually our second episode, was about drones, and one of my incident commanders, Dave Sawicki, he's been flying drones now for a while, and MSRC now has 2 drones in the Pacific Northwest full time, plus a contract with another operator. So it's possible for me to get a drone almost anywhere in the Puget Sound within a couple of hours to get some height of eye, and that really is the difference. But there's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, we've talked about the OSRO side, and that's where I come into this from the maritime industry and from the OSRO side. Matter of fact, I was first with Clean Sound Cooperative when WCMRC was called Burrard Clean, right? That's when it was and I remember doing some of the 10,000 ton drills that you guys did, but the OSROs in the United States are not the spill management team, but you're both, right?
We are, yeah. No, it's funny when I started, and my role with the organization is communications manager. So I do a lot of engagement, and I was the first person in the role for the organization. So there hadn't been a lot of sort of proactive outreach to folks, and what I found when I started to do that is most people didn't know that WCMRC existed. Some people knew about Burrard Clean, but there was kind of a general lack of awareness, and part of that was I was finding that people just were struggling with WCMRC, or Western Canada Marine Response Corporation. So I went back and I talked to the leadership. I said, have we thought about something a little bit catchier as a name? And they said, well, we used to be called Burrard Clean. I was like, well, that's actually good. People remember that. And they said, well, the problem is we get all these calls from folks asking to get their clothes dry clean. So maybe it wasn't the greatest name after all. But yeah, no, we are both. We have the vessels and equipment for the actual on water operations, but we do have a fully staffed incident management team. So folks are trained in all incident management roles. We have 2 functions. So I'm the communications manager during my day-to-day, but I'm the public information officer for a spill. And we train that way through exercise. We're all trained on ICS. And really we're flexible in that we can adapt to in Canada, they're called the polluter, but some people call them the responsible party. But we don't really know their capacity coming in. So it could be a spill with one of the oil majors, and they're going to bring in a full team, and they may not need our support. Or you could be looking at a situation where you have a small tug and barge operation where they don't have that support. So we're able to bring in that incident management team to the operation and support them that way. So we are very flexible and nimble on that side of things. And we've been running through ICS to respond to spills for the last couple of decades, and the Canadian Coast Guard has just come on as well, fully embracing the ICS system. And so it's a fantastic way to manage a response, and it's really come a long way, even in the last couple of years on the West Coast here.
So if an American shipper had an incident and you stood up your incident command team and they brought their away team, incident management team into Canada, good luck with that now with COVID, but brought them into Canada, do you remain primarily the incident command team? Do you continue to act as the incident commander, or will you step into the background and let that foreign team take over? How does that work? And do you have any regulatory requirements to stay in the lead that are different from my understanding of U.S. law?
Yeah, I mean, I think the principles are the same, but it's all about the nuances, right? So, in Canada, the response organizations get certified by Transport Canada. So we are a TC, Transport Canada Certified Response Organization, which under the Shipping Act allows us something called responder immunity, and to maintain that responder immunity, organizations have to be contracted to WCM or through WCMRC. So if you're looking at the incident management team per se, certainly the approach is in Canada is that it's a unified command, and WCMRC does not have a seat in unified command. In Canada, it's again similar to the States, but you have a federal representative, that's the Canadian Coast Guard up here. You have a provincial representative, which is the BC Ministry of Environment. You have a local First Nation, whatever nation is sort of the most impacted or the primary nation. You have the municipality, the local municipality, and then you have the polluter. So that's typically, those five entities are typically what forms unified command. WCMRC occupies a position what we call spill response manager, which is really almost like a technical advisory role to the polluter. And so some folks may not have that expertise, and so we're able to provide that expertise. And then we're able to provide those other roles, planning section chief, environment leads, and whatnot. But as with any incident, as you're aware, they're all unique. They're all different. So if someone comes up and they're well positioned to be a planning section chief, certainly we would be swapping in and out. So I wouldn't be able to say that there's a hard and fast rule there, Dan. Each spill that I've been on, it has varied, but we are certainly able to integrate with the polluters incident management team, and we've done that on a number of occasions.
I'm just laughing when you refer to them as the polluter. In the United States, we have a very nice name that you already referred to, or we call them the responsible party, and it sounds so much less like you're going to jail than when you call them the polluter, right?
Yeah.
I remember I did a big drill down in Brazil, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, and they too used the incident command system, and they also formed a unified command, but it was unified without you. Right. There's no seat at the table for the polluter, right? All we care from the polluter is that you write the check and you give us your passports because we're not letting you leave, right? So there is a seat at the table in unified command in Canada for the polluter.
Absolutely. I mean, the polluter, responsible polluter, maybe that's the way it is.
Well, I guess just because you showed up in the incident command post, you're a responsible polluter as opposed to running away and being an irresponsible polluter.
Yeah, the way it works, I mean, the expectation is that the responsible polluter takes the lead for the response. And historically, Coast Guard's sort of been more a monitoring role. So as long as the polluter is doing what needs to be done, the Coast Guard sort of took a bit of a step back. We're seeing a change in that. We're seeing a more active Coast Guard in unified command. But at the end of the day, even though it's a unified command, the Canadian Coast Guard does have that 51% card. So if the polluter decides that they are not going to take an action that's been directed, let's say by the environmental unit, the Coast Guard does have the authority to come in and make sure that action happens. They also have the authority to take over the response if they deem it necessary. And then if there isn't a polluter, if we go back to the mystery spills that we're talking about, if it's a mystery spill or a legacy spill, and there's no polluter, then the Coast Guard is taking that lead.
All right. Well, all of those things are mirrored in the United States. All that is also true. But in some of my other roles, I could end up coming to Canada as part of a spill management team, and it's good to kind of reiterate how that all fits together, because it is ever so slightly different than it is in the United States. I remember doing a big one of the not CAN-US LANT a number of years ago. The U.S. Canadian joint cross border exercise on the Atlantic coast, and one of the tactics that was looked at was the deployment of aerial dispersants. And in the United States, you actually get permission buy off from the Unified Command, from regulatory agencies, from the region response team, which is in a sense permission to legally apply dispersants. But this drill a number of years ago, the Canadian Unified Command would never go so far as to say, you have our legal permission, simply, we're not going to stop you and we'll decide whether or not to prosecute you for it later, which I thought was a really interesting approach. So you get used to doing things in one country, and then you go into Canada, or you go into the Netherlands, or you go into Brazil, or you go somewhere else, and you don't realize, they say ICS, but that doesn't mean that the rules are the same.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's the unique thing about this industry is it is a global industry, and we are a regional player. Our main area of operations is the west coast of Canada, but we've been involved in international spills. We sent up a vessel to Exxon as we started talking there. We had crews down in Deepwater Horizon. And certainly, if there is a spill in those shipping lanes that I was talking about, there is going to be a joint response from the Canadian and U.S. side. And as you mentioned, there are treaties in place to address that. For the BC Washington area, it's that CAN-US Pact. And as you know, Dan, that the Canadian and American Coast Guards are jointly responsible for exercising that. And on the Canadian side, they'd be engaging Western Canada Marine Response, and on the American side, it'd be MSRC. So there's certainly those. Every time we do those exercises, there's certain little interesting pieces that come out. Even though the ICS principles are the same, the response tactics are the same. There's always something that kind of there's always these little hiccups, whether it's border crossings or something else that happens, and that's why those exercises are so important to continue to work out those pieces. But going back to the dispersants or in situ burning, this sort of alternative response measures on the Canadian side, that's sort of overseen by Environment Canada. And historically, if WCMRC wants to use dispersants or in situ burning, we do need to get their approval beforehand. Is how that works. I think they understand that the current system is a bit cumbersome, because really, if you're going to use dispersants, particularly if you're looking at a product like diluted bitumen, which gets viscous really quickly, so your window to use dispersants is quite narrow. That if we're going to be able to use those alternative measures, they're going to have to tighten up the approval process for that. And I know Environment Canada and the federal family are looking at doing that right now, and sort of tightening that process up so that we can more confidently add those measures into our toolbox. Because right now in Canada, the primary tactic for spills is the mechanical recovery using the booms and the vessels and stuff. And that's not the case in all jurisdictions, right? If you look at the English Channel, for example, their primary response, their go-to is dispersants right away. There's just too much traffic out there. If you're going to launch a large-scale mechanical recovery operation, you're going to be blocking up traffic. So their go-to is dispersants. It's certainly a topic that gets a lot of attention. Whether they're effective, and we don't make those decisions. We turn to the environmental unit. They'll do that net environment benefit analysis. It's not there's always negative consequences either side you look at it, but what's the least damaging for the environment? And so you have those experts, and that's the beauty of using that incident command system is being able to bring in those experts into the response, right away, especially and more, increasingly the First Nation knowledge too. That Nuka Sound spill that we're working on, we've got First Nations are right in the environmental unit, and we have data on sensitivities in that area, but often we don't have that first-hand knowledge, that cultural knowledge that goes into some of the sensitive areas on the coast. So to be able to bring them into the environment unit to help make those decisions on what is the best cleanup technique in this particular situation, where should we be concentrating our protective efforts in the response. So that's a huge benefit for the operations folks like WCMRC to be able to lean on that technical expertise during an incident.
Well, down in the Gulf of Mexico, dispersants are applied much more quickly than they are in other parts of the country. Here in Washington and Oregon, we have some pre-approval areas off the coast that we can fly dispersants with the blessing of the federal on-scene coordinator. We don't have to go through the entire region response team for approval. We have some case-by-case areas, and then we have some absolutely positively no, never going to happen, don't even bother to ask kind of areas. Do you have some similar pre-planning that's been done? And what do you have in the in-house for dispersant application capabilities?
So the East Coast, so they're on the East Coast of Canada, which has actually a lot higher volumes of oil shipped out of the East Coast. We have a sister organization out there, the ECRC, and they did go through an exercise with an external consultant, DILA consultant, to develop just what you're talking about, sort of the red zone, the no-go zone, you're never going to apply dispersants there, the yellow zone where maybe, and then the green zone where you definitely can do that right away. We would like to see that done on the West Coast as well. That would really help our response planning, knowing ahead of time where we're going to be able to do it for sure and where we just shouldn't even be bothered. In terms of if there was a go-ahead for dispersants, if it was a large-scale aerial piece, certainly we'd be looking to either OSRL or down in Washington State for support on that side of things. If it's on a smaller scale, we do have dispersants capacity on some of our skimming vessels, so we're able to do that on the small side. But a large aerial dispersant operation, we'd be looking into outside support.
Okay. Do you have a stockpile of dispersants of your own, or would you be looking to have OSRL or MSRC?
Oh, yeah, we have a small supply of sort of on the shoreline cleaning side of things, but nothing to handle a large aerial operation. So we'd be looking to the OSRL or elsewhere, and that's really where that we talked about the global side of the business, and in this situation, it's the mutual aid arrangements, right? So it's similar to any kind of emergency response where you've got your local capacity, you've got your sort of regional capacity and national and then international capacity. So as the severity or the complexity of the spill gets more significant, then you're going to start cascading those resources in. So in the case of a large scale spill where we're looking at dispersants, we're going to be looking at our mutual aid agreements and our outside networks to support on that dispersant side.
It was really neat to see OSRL bring that 727, Boeing 727 dispersant aircraft online. As far as I know, that was the first commercial passenger jet converted to a dispersant use. And now my understanding is that MSRC is working on two 737s as dispersant aircraft. So that is very exciting as well. Yes,
yeah. I saw that presentation that was part of the event that you took on a little while ago, and certainly that would be a game changer for them. Absolutely.
Michael Lowry, it's anticipated that tanker traffic in British Columbia waters will increase as oil exports ramp up. What preparations are you making for that increase in traffic?
Yeah, so I mean, part of the preparations here for this expansion in tanker traffic in the Juan de Fuca and the Georgia Strait is we've been launching a coastal response program over the last number of years, and one of the key pieces to that is coastal mapping for not only the shipping lanes, but it's the entire coast of BC, the entire west coast here. And this is something that's been with spill response in the spill response community for a while. But what we're doing here is we're really bringing in, taking advantage of the improvement in GIS technology over the last number of years. So we're bringing in data sets from a number of different sources. In some places, we've got 70 different data sets. And really what we're looking at is trying to nail down in advance where the sensitive areas are on the coast. And when I'm talking about sensitive areas, I'm talking about environmental sensitivities like eelgrass beds or seal haulouts, cultural sensitivities. So we could, indigenous burial sites or clam middens or other cultural sites, and then also economic sites like marinas. And so if we pinpoint those ahead of time, we can develop a booming strategy. So putting boom in the water to prevent the oil from reaching that site in the first place. And so those strategies, those protection strategies are called geographic response strategies in the business, or GRS for short. So we develop those ahead of time, first as a paper exercise, and then we go out and ground truth that information. So, these GRSs will contain information like where, first of all, what are you protecting? What's sensitive there? And then where are you going to put the boom? Where are the anchor points for the boom? How are you going to tie it up? How much boom do you need? How many vessels will you need to deploy that particular strategy? And so once that strategy is developed, it goes into the GIS system and it's available on this mapping platform. And so if we have a spill, we do that trajectory model. We know it's headed in a certain direction. We can send our GIS teams out to deploy those protection strategies in advance. And so they're heading to that particular site. They can bring that up on their smartphone. They can dial in what that protection strategy requires. So it really cuts down on that response time initially. So we've got about 700 of those along the coast so far. And what's really been beneficial for us is this has been a fantastic way to bring coastal communities into response. When we first started really reaching out to communities, what we found is that there wasn't a lot of involvement of coastal communities in response planning, and so they really felt left out. This is I'm talking about on the Canadian side. They really felt left out of response. So this allowed us to bring them into response by helping us to identify sensitivities. So even though we've gone through this process of bringing in these data sets, and there's still going to be, in the Gulf Islands, for example, there still might be a local bird expert that can really help us out with identifying spots that maybe aren't in any current data sets. And so it allows us to bring the communities into the response process, and then we've also committed to making that information available publicly as well, which in Canada was not something that had been in place. So now we've got a dedicated public portal. Folks on a particular island can go on, look at what the strategies are in place, know that have some comfort that the areas that are important to them are have been looked at, and there's plans to protect those areas. And we're now in the stage of that where we're bringing in equipment for those particular strategies. So we've got 20-foot sea cans that are stacked with 1,700 feet of boom. These coastal response packages are being put into the local communities, into marinas, and then we're training folks in those areas through our Best of Opportunity program to access that equipment and deploy that equipment. So in effect, they're really empowered to protect their own backyard. And that's not to take the work away from us. It's because we want to be able to have our specialized equipment, the large skimmers that we talked about, tackling the main spill site. And obviously, folks who are living in that community are going to be able to get to those protection strategies, potentially sooner than us that are coming from one of our bases. So it's been a great way for us to make sure that folks are aware of the protection that's out there and have an active role in the protection of their own backyard.
Yeah, that's got to make them feel good, especially since WCMRC is covering literally tens of thousands of miles of coastline between the Gulf Islands and the Queen Charlotte Islands. I don't know how many miles of coastline it really is. I've sailed through a lot of it in my time. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's 28,000 kilometers of coastline, and a lot of it extremely remote. So there's a lot of infrastructure in the southern part of the coast, and in the north with Prince Rupert is soon to be the third biggest port in Canada. But in that central coast area, it is very remote. So it's key that communities in that area have the ability to respond while we're mobilizing some of our bigger assets.
Yeah, once you go north around Cape Caution, you get up through Bella Bella and that area. It's remote, as you say. It's hard to get to. There aren't very many airstrips. It's out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's my favorite part of going north.
Yeah.
The Canadian part from Cape Caution up through Grenville Channel, beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So, well, thank you, Michael Lowry. This has been really, really great. I especially like hearing how you implement ICS. So I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us on today, and perhaps we can chat again in another time when we have some more news for you.
I look forward to it.
All right, cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tactics Meeting with our guest, Michael Lowry from WCMRC. If you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as we enjoyed making it, please tell a friend, send a tweet, make a Facebook post, help us spread the word. It'd be a great favor. We would greatly appreciate it. Wear a mask and stay safe.